Good morning and welcome to class, my dear students. How are you today? I believe you are safe, you are keeping your health precautions, you are keeping your distance, and you are washing your hands regularly. We'll be using this medium to interact academically and equip you with more knowledge. I believe this time will pass. So I want to appeal to everyone to please get his or writing material, sit down, and get set for class. I'll be taking you English language this morning, and we'll be starting with letter writing. Don't forget that I am Dr. Moloye. Before we move into the details of the topic, I want to explain some things we must achieve at the end of the lesson, our learning objectives. At the end of the class, she will explain the two types of letters, two types. Then also, she'll be able to explain the steps to writing a letter. There are some steps you must consider in writing a letter. So at the end of the class, she'll be able to explain the steps. Also, she'll be able to explain the structure of a good informal letter. She'll be able to explain the structure of a good informal letter. Also, she'll be able to differentiate between the two types of letter. The two types, she'll be able to state their differences. That's very important. Let's start with the definition of letter writing. Thank God we are no more in the age whereby we exchange correspondence through letters. But for exam purpose, for internal exams and external exams, we have to learn this. And I must tell you that letter writing covers 30% of your exam score. Try and note this so I will tell you how important it is. It covers 30% of your exam score. It is the exchange of written or printed message. In those days, our parents, they send letters to exchange information. But thank God now we have shorter ways of doing that. We have SMS, we have WhatsApp, and likes. So it's the exchange of written or printed messages, and we have two forms: the personal letter, which also is the same thing as the informal letter, and the business letter, which is also called the formal letter. The personal letter is sent between family members, friends, or acquaintance, while the formal is exchanged with business or government organization. That's what the formal is all about. So let's see the first one. Let's examine the first one, which is the formal. These letters follow a certain pattern of formality. Note this keyword: certain pattern of formality. They are strictly kept professional in nature, and addresses directly the issue concerned. Any type of letter to authorize falls within this given category. That any type of letter that authorizes falls under here. And let's see some of the types of letter that are formal. The first thing is letter of inquiry. You want to ask questions about admission process in the school. You want to ask questions on how things are run in a place. You write a letter to inquire. The letter of application, you need a job. You want to apply for a job. Write a formal letter to that effect. Then a sales letter is more or less a sales report that gives details of what you've done in a day in a shop. You write it to your boss. You give daily report of your sales to him. Then an acceptance letter is common to an institution. You are given such to assure them that you have accepted the admission and you be of good behavior. In 2-3 years time, most of you will see this letter I'm talking about. It's given to students at times in the institution and even employment places to accept that you are now a member of the organization. Then reply to an inquiry. You know the first one I said letter of inquiry. So reply to it is also a formal letter. Then you want to make a claim. You make a claim as regards getting what is rightfully yours. You have been wronged or something that is just has been given to somebody else. You make a claim to that effect. Then adjusting a claim. You want to adjust a claim also. It's also a form of formal letter. Then letter of apology. You write letter of apology in a formal way. Imagine your class has done something bad to the school management. Your class has been the most noisy class in your school, or you were part of a set of students that caused commotion in the school. Now you've been scolded and you were told to write a letter of apology. It's meant to be a formal letter. Then lastly, a cover letter. It's more or less a letter of application. It states, in the cover letter you state briefly. You state briefly your personal statements or objective as a person. That is what a cover letter is. Then let's see the format of a formal letter, the format now. First is your address. And your address should be on the right hand side of the margin. Right hand side of the margin. And that should be followed immediately by your date. Right hand side of the margin and should be followed immediately by your date. Mind, there are two ways of writing a letter. Two ways of writing an address. The first is a slant and the second is a block. I have warned you in class about the slants because it makes your letter looks unorganized. So the best thing is make sure your address is written in the block way, and that's a straight format way. And you don't leave a space between your date and your address. Your date follows your address immediately. Then after your address is the address of the recipient. The addressee, who is the recipient, or the receiver of the letter. And that comes immediately after your address on the left hand side of the margin. Left hand side of the margin. It comes immediately up on the left hand side of the margin after your own address. And this one, you don't put a date here at all. Your date should only be with your own address, no date here. And before the address of the addressee, his or her title should be here. Imagine you write it to the head of schools. Or you write the head of schools. That's the name of the addressee, comma, Greenland or college. Or you write it to the chairman of Nigerian breweries. The chairman, comma, Nigerian breweries. The other things will follow. Then after the address of the addressee is the salutation. And this takes just two forms. It's either dear sir or dear madam. Dear sir or dear madam. Mind you, not dear ma. Dear ma is informal and not accepted. So it's dear sir or dear madam. Then after the salutation, you come to the subject. Let me remind you that salutation must come immediately after the address of the receiver. A new paragraph that must take salutation, and it comes immediately after this. The next is the subject. The subject is the topic of the letter being written. The title is the subject, and After this, the title, which is subject, you introduce the reason for writing such a letter. Here you don't greet. Mind you, this is a formal letter. You don't greet at all. You go straight into the reason for writing the letter, and that takes your paragraph 1. Remember, I told you that a good letter must have 5 or 6 paragraphs. So paragraph 1 is for introduction. And a good paragraph must have at least 6 lines. A good paragraph must have at least 6 lines. Then after the introduction is the body. This takes the 3 or 4 points that is to buttress the reason for writing a letter. In the body, you discuss the 3 or 4 points that are the reasons for writing a letter. And lastly is your conclusion. You conclude. And this is always a brief summary of everything in the body. The conclusion is a brief summary of everything in the body. Then for your closing remark is also called your subscript. For your closing remark, you are to use yours faithfully. That is most accepted closing remark for any formal letter. Just faithfully. Then you sign. Mind you, the Y in yours faithfully, the Y is capital letter Y. Then the F in faithfully is small letter f. Then you sign after yours faithfully, and you write your name, your first name first, and your surname after. Then a full stop after your name. After yours faithfully is a comma. Then a full stop after your name. Then let's go on to the next thing now. The next one is an informal letter. For exam purpose, remember I always advise to write this. And this is because this is the easiest means of getting high grade in exam. In the sense that you have the liberty. Mind you, there are letters written to close acquaintance of the writer, friends, family, and relatives. It gives you freedom of expression. In this letter, you can express yourself well. Unlike the former one, where you are restricted. Mind you, look at the keywords here. Formality and professional in nature. This restricts you. But here, you have the liberty to express yourself well. Because letter is written to close people. People you know very well. And here, casual language is allowed. You can be casual and not formal. Then here, you are allowed to have emotional undertone in this. You are allowed to add emotional undertone in this. Then let's come to the structure now of an informal letter, the structure. I will take my time to explain this because this is very key. It's very key. The first is your what? Is your address. That is the address of the writer. In this place, you write only one address. Mind you, one address. One address. And it's always on the right hand side of the margin. It is always on the right hand side of the margin. One address, and is always on the right hand side of the margin. Then after this is your date. Your date comes immediately after your address. Note that your date comes immediately after your address. You don't separate your date from your address. The last line after the address is your date. And lastly, and next to that is your greetings and introduction. Here you have the liberty to greet the person and introduce what you want to say or why you're writing a letter. And I've said this is always in one paragraph. I said this is coming afterwards, comes below the address. Don't forget that. Then here, you have the liberty to greet the person and introduce the reason for your writing. And the purpose of writing should be included here immediately after the greetings. And this should make up your paragraph 1. First words. Paragraph. First paragraph. This should be your first paragraph. You combine both. Then next is the body of the letter. The body should maintain a friendly tone. Mind you, you are discussing and you are writing to somebody you know. The language should be chatty. There should be a flow of expression as if you are talking to the person. That is what makes an informal letter informal. There's a flow of expression, and the tone is very, very friendly. Very friendly. Then, based on your relationship with the person, you have to be respectful and considerate also. If you are talking to a friend, you know how to express yourself. Then to your parents, you know you have to be respectful. And like I said in the first type of letter writing, which is in the formal one, every letter must have at least 5 paragraphs and at most 6 paragraphs. Your paragraph 1, this is your greetings and introduction. Then this body should take paragraph 2, 3, and 4. And here you explain your ideas one after the other. In each paragraph, you put a point to explain your letter. Is that okay? You put a point to explain the letter. And the last thing is the conclusion. Here you do a summary. Sum up the reasons for writing letter. That means summarize letter. That's it. Then say a meaningful. Look at this. Say a meaningful affectionate goodbye to the reader. We now will say it. As I say, extend my greetings to your parents, your friends, and family, and so on and so forth. Then don't forget to invite the reader to write back. This shows cordiality between two of you, that you guys are cordial, and it shows an intention to keep your discussion going. So these are things that makes up your conclusion. Don't forget I said here that here the language is friendly tone. I said you have to be respectful and considerate depending on your relationship with the person you are writing to. Then the next after this is your closing remark or your signature. And the best, all these are accepted for friendly letters, the one you write in classes. But the best for exam purpose is yours sincerely. For exam purpose is yours sincerely with a comma. Then with your name at the end. Your first name only. No surname. Full stop. So just do this at the end, and that ends the letter. Don't, for example purpose, I would advise we don't try any of this because some marker can be very funny, but this is acceptable anywhere for exam purpose. Then let's consider this last part of the topic, which is steps to writing a good letter. There are 3 major steps to writing a good letter. 3 major steps. And these steps, once they are not considered, there'll be a problem. The first step is the writing stage. Here you generate ideas. Note this keyword. Generate ideas. That is, you think of the ideas you want to present. Here you develop your points. You jot down your points. You jot down. You jot down your points here, so that when you want to write, you have a flow of thoughts. When you have done this, you come to the next stage, which is the writing stage. This is the composing stage. The composing stage, that is when everything you have collected in a planning stage, you develop them. Here you develop them. Then is here you give body. I said here you give body to skeletal jottings you have done. The pre-writing stage. This is where you develop the points you have highlighted in the pre-writing stage. This must come after pre-writing. If you skip this and jump to this, you will have issues with flow of thoughts, in the sense that at a point in letter, your flow of thought will stop because you didn't plan the letter well. But when you have done the first step, which is the planning stage, the letter is going to be good. You will flow while writing. And the last important stage is the writing stage. This stage is very, very key. Here you proofread and edit your work. No man is an island. No man is perfect. If you fail to do this after writing, note what it will do. It will give the tutor the chance to cut down your grades, because this plays a vital role in getting high grades and is mandatory in the writing procedure. So if you skip this process, some errors that you should have avoided, you won't avoid them because you have not revised the work. But in you revising your work, that is when you have the chance to cross your T's and dot your I's. You are able to change your spelling errors and all sort of errors that you could have avoided. So please try and note this part. And lastly, before I go to the conclusion, every good letter gives you 50 minutes to write. In every exam, you have how many minutes? 50 minutes. To plan your time well, I will advise you use 10 minutes here. 10 minutes here to plan. And 30 minutes here to write. By the time you have planned well here, you'll find it very easy to write under 30 minutes here. And lastly, your last 10 minutes to revise your work. This is very, very crucial. If you can try and follow these steps, you'll find letter writing very easy to do. And before I leave, remember that formal letter is official and it has a professional undertone. But the informal one is friendly and casual. Friendly and casual. Like we have here, I said it's formal. Here, friendly and casual. Then the structures are different in the sense that formal has 2 addresses. Informal has 1 address. The formal has a title. In the informal, no title. In the formal, you introduce your reason straight away, but in the informal, you have greetings and introduction. And lastly, they have the same steps in writing. To write them, you follow the same steps to write them. In case you have questions after listening to this and after jotting down, you can send your questions to me via my email address, which is dapo.orimoloye@greenland.org. Before I leave, attempt this assignment. I want next class. In clear terms, state 5 differences between formal and informal. I want it in tabular form. I want it in tabular form. 5 differences between formal and what? And informal. I want it in tabular form. And before we go, remember to maintain all health guidelines because the virus is real. Stay home, stay safe. I'll see you in my next class.